"Greetings, traveler. I'm glad to see you in my tavern. Here you may rest after a hard road, drink a mug of good ale, and listen to an old, honest witcher's tale, one that smells of smoke, winding roads, and silver coins." Night settled over the Temerian backroads like a heavy cloak, dimming the world until only the moon dared shine upon it. Geralt of Rivia rode in silence, letting the familiar rhythm of Roach's hooves steady his thoughts. He had taken a contract in a nearby town that turned out to be nothing but drunken rambling, and now he sought an inn, a fire, and perhaps a moment's peace. Peace, however, seldom traveled the path. A cold wind stirred. Roach snorted, ears flicking back. Geralt felt the shift as well, magic, faint but unmistakable, brushing against the edges of his witcher senses like a probing fingertip. He reined in the mare. "Show yourself," he said into the stillness. A woman stepped from between the birches. Cloaked in dark wool, hood low over her face, she carried herself neither like a sorceress nor a frightened villager, but something between. Her boots were muddy as though she had run far. Her breath puffed in the frigid air. "You are Geralt of Rivia," she said, not as a question. He rested a hand on his sword hilt. "Depends who's asking." She approached until moonlight touched her features, pale skin, sharp cheekbones, eyes that had seen too much. "My name is Marina. I've waited for you." "You've waited on the road for a witcher you couldn't know would pass?" "I knew," she said. "I followed the signs. They led me here." Geralt exhaled slowly. "Sorceress?" "No." A quick, almost defensive shake of her head. "Nothing so grand. Villagers call me a witch, though the word is heavier than it should be. I have small gifts. Nothing more." Her fingers trembled as she folded them into her sleeves. "I need your help. Desperately." Geralt did not move, letting silence coax more from her. It worked. "My daughter, Elin. Something stalks her. Something that should not exist in this world. It comes at night, leaves marks on the walls, whispers her name. I've tried every charm I know, burned sage, laid salt. Nothing stops it." He considered her carefully. Witches, village hedge mages, often misread magic. Fear made their senses unreliable, but her voice carried no hysteria, only exhaustion. "What sort of creature?" he asked. "I don't know," she whispered, "but it seeks her, always her. And now the villagers have grown afraid. They say we brought a curse from the forest, that we must leave before death befalls them all." Geralt swung down from Roach. "Where's the girl now?" "With a friend, safe for the moment, but it follows. It always follows." She stepped closer, lowering her hood fully. Her eyes glimmered with urgency. "I will pay what I can. It will not be much, but—" "Not worried about payment," Geralt cut in. "Worried about details? If I'm to hunt something, I need proper knowledge." A long pause. The wind sighed between them. "There are things," she murmured, "I have not told the villagers. Things from long ago. I will tell you, but not here. My home is a short walk away." Geralt studied her for another heartbeat. There was no deceit on her face, only a lingering shadow of old fear. He gestured for her to lead the way. The path wound through a thinning stretch of forest, the trees leaning inward like ancient gossips. Marina walked swiftly, her cloak brushing frost-covered brambles. Geralt followed, senses open. He listened not for words, but for the world's reply. The crunch of twigs, the shifting of distant branches, the subtle ripple of unseen magic. They reached a cottage sitting alone at the forest's edge. Smoke curled faintly from its chimney, though no fire burned inside. As they entered, Geralt noticed the runes carved along the doorframe, old designs, twisted slightly from their original forms, protective wards but altered in ways he could not yet name. Marina lit a lantern. Its flame cast a golden sheen over the cramped interior, shelves crowded with herbs, dried roots, not the lair of a dangerous mage, more the workshop of someone desperate to fend off the unknown. She motioned for him to sit at a roughly carved table. The villagers think the creature wants my child because of my gifts. But that isn't the truth. Geralt kept silent, giving her space. When I was young, she began, voice wavering, I wandered too deeply into the forest. There I met a spirit, an ancient one. It was lonely, curious. It offered to teach me small magics in exchange for companionship. I accepted. Geralt frowned. Forest spirits don't offer gifts without price. I know that now. Her gaze drifted to the shuttered window. I thought it harmless. For years, it asked little of me, just visits, offerings, songs. Then one day it asked for a promise. I was foolish. I said yes before hearing the terms. Geralt felt the pieces shifting into place. What did it want? Marina swallowed. A child, my firstborn, not as a sacrifice, but to raise, to claim as its own. I refused. I fled. I used a charm taught by a traveling druid to sever the bond, or so I believed. Her voice cracked. When Elin was born, I felt eyes upon us. I knew it had not forgotten. Now it comes each night whispering, calling her by name. Geralt leaned back, weighing her words. Ancient forest spirits, Lessie, Borrowy, or older things, did not easily relinquish their claims, and they were patient. Why come to me now? He asked. This didn't start yesterday. For years, the spirit lingered at a distance, she said. It only watched. But 3 nights ago, the runes failed. Elin woke screaming, saying a voice was in her room. I saw the marks myself, long, deep scratches along the wall. Since then, it grows bolder. Geralt drummed his fingers lightly on the table. If it wanted to take her, why not do it already? Marina hesitated. Because it needs her willing. Its power is bound by old rules. It cannot seize what has not answered its call. And she's answering it, not knowingly, but in her sleep, she speaks to it, as though she hears a lullaby only she can understand. Geralt stood. I'll need to see the girl, observe her sleep, examine the marks, and the forest where you met this spirit. Marina gave a relieved nod. Thank you, Witcher. I feared no one would believe me. He strapped his gauntlets tighter. Belief doesn't matter. Signs do. Tracks do. Truth does. Outside, the wind moaned again. Long, low, almost mournful. Geralt paused at the threshold. Something watched from the tree line. Whatever haunted the girl had already sensed his arrival, and it was waiting. Dawn had not yet broken when Geralt and Marina departed the cottage. Frost clung to the grass like scattered crystal shards, crunching softly beneath their boots. A thin mist hung over the fields and drifted toward the sleeping village ahead. Somewhere within its quiet lanes, the girl, Aelin, waited, and so did answers Geralt intended to pry free before nightfall returned with sharper teeth. They walked in silence until the first rooftops came into view. The houses stood close together, their chimneys rising like old sentinels above the gloom. Curtains twitched as the pair passed. Geralt sensed eyes following him, wary, resentful. Witchers were seldom welcomed, and the presence of Marina only heightened the tension. She stays with a friend of mine, Marina said softly. A widow named Lisa. She alone does not fear me. Her hands tightened around the clasp of her cloak. The others would sooner turn us out into the cold. Geralt grunted. Fear makes folk foolish. Fear makes them cruel. They reached a small house with a crooked doorway and a porch sagging under its own age. Marina knocked. A moment later the door eased open and a middle-aged woman peered out. Her expression warmed at the sight of Marina, then tightened when her gaze settled on Geralt. So this is the Witcher, she murmured. Marina nodded. He will help us. Come in then. She's asleep. Best not to wake her yet. The interior was simple but tidy. A single candle burned on a shelf, filling the room with a faint scent of beeswax. Lisa guided them to a back chamber, where a small bed stood against the wall. There, nestled beneath a woolen blanket, lay Aelin. Geralt paused. The child could not have been more than 6. Fair hair spilled across the pillow. Her breathing was steady, but her small brow was creased, as if caught in a dream she could not escape. Marina brushed a strand of hair from the girl's face. She hardly rests anymore. When she sleeps, she murmurs, "Words I do not know." "Let me see the marks," Geralt said. Lisa motioned toward the opposite wall. By candlelight, jagged gouges became visible, 5 long slashes, deep enough to cut to the timber beneath the plaster. The lines curved slightly, following no human hand. Geralt approached, tracing a gloved finger along one. The grooves were cold, unnaturally so. "These weren't made by claws," he said. "Something sharper, something that pierces between worlds." Marina swallowed. "Then it truly is the spirit." "Something akin to one," Geralt corrected, "but its power is taking shape. These marks carry intent." He examined the room further. The window frame bore faint soot smudges. "You burned sage last night?" Marina nodded. It calmed her dreams, but the whispering returned. Geralt stepped back to Aelin's bedside. The girl shifted, her lips parting. A soft sound escaped her, near a hum, near a word, but neither wholly formed. He leaned closer. Elhen Shale, she murmured. The words pricked his senses like icy needles. "Does she speak that often?" Geralt asked. "Only recently," Marina whispered. "Do you know what it means?" "No," he said, straightening, "but I know it isn't child's babble." A brittle silence followed, broken only by the crackle of the candle. The spirit was not merely calling the child, it was entwining itself into her dreams, shaping her thoughts, binding her slowly. "We'll search the forest tonight," he said at last. "Whatever this thing is, it left a trail." Lisa's lips tightened. "Geralt, forgive my caution, but if it comes again before nightfall, then I'll be nearby." Marina exhaled shakily. "Thank you." Geralt remained with them until the girl stirred. When Aelin awoke, her eyes, blue as frost-bitten morning, fixed first on her mother, then on Geralt. She did not shrink from him as many children did. She simply studied him, silently, curiously. "You're the White Wolf," she said in a small voice. Geralt blinked. Folk talk too much. Her gaze drifted toward the window. He was here again. Marina stiffened. "Aelin, what do you remember?" The girl's fingers twisted in her blanket. Only the singing. It sounded like wind in the leaves, but warm, like someone was calling me home. Geralt crouched beside her. "Did it frighten you?" Aelin hesitated. "I don't know, it felt sad." A chill crept down the Witcher's spine. Spirits that lured with sorrow were the oldest kind, born of ancient bonds, old promises twisted into longing. "We're going to find what's troubling you," he said. But you must not answer when it calls." Helen nodded, though her gaze flickered with uncertainty. Geralt stood. "We'll let her rest. Prepare what you need, Marina. Tonight we go into the forest." They left the house as the first threads of sunlight touched the rooftops. The village stirred awake. Distant voices carried the tone of suspicion. A few men paused their work to watch the Witcher pass, their grim stares making clear he was judged guilty of threat simply by being present. Marina drew closer to him. "They think I brought this evil upon them. If the creature takes my child, they will blame me. If it harms them, they will blame me still." Geralt's voice was firm. Superstition feeds itself. Yet even he could feel the heaviness hanging over the settlement, an unspoken dread that twisted the morning air. They returned to Marina's cottage, where the forest loomed in the distance like a wall of ancient secrets. The sun had risen, yet the tree line remained unnaturally dim, as though shadowed by memories unwilling to fade. "What exactly did you promise the spirit?" Geralt asked as she gathered herbs and small talismans into a satchel. Marina's hands faltered. "I told you. It asked for companionship. And the promise? It said it would teach me, that it wished for a child to guide, to pass its knowledge to. I refused. I fled before accepting any pact." Geralt narrowed his eyes. "Spirits don't pursue refusal with this kind of determination. Something bound you to it, something more than you're telling me." Marina's breath hitched. "I did nothing more, I swear it." He didn't press further, not yet, but her earlier honesty carried a tremor now. Whether it was fear or guilt remained unclear. When evening neared, they shared a simple meal. Outside, the wind sifted through the dry leaves, whispering faintly along the eaves. The forest seemed to lean closer as the day dimmed. Geralt tightened the straps on his armor. "Stay behind me. Don't stray. The spirit may try to draw you off." Marina nodded, face pale. Together they stepped toward the forest path, where the trees rose tall and silent, their branches curled like waiting hands. The air shifted as they crossed beneath the first bough. Cooler, thicker, humming with a magic that made Geralt's medallion tremble softly. Somewhere deep within, something stirred, watching, listening, awaiting their arrival. Night thickened as Geralt and Marina entered the forest, its ancient canopy swallowing the last of the dusk. The air grew heavy, cool, and strangely still as though Geralt felt his medallion tremble again. Not sharply, but in a faint, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat sounding somewhere beneath the earth. Marina followed close behind, clutching her satchel. "It never felt like this when I came here as a girl," she murmured, voice barely above a whisper. "That was years ago," Geralt replied. "Forests change. Spirits grow restless. They move deeper into the trees, guided only by the faint gleam of starlight filtering through twisted branches. The narrow path became little more than a memory swallowed by roots and moss. Frost glittered like silver dust on the undergrowth, though the air was not cold enough for it. The presence he sensed grew stronger, ancient, patient, aware. Soon they reached a clearing. The trees encircled it like an audience watching from the dark. In its center rose a solitary stone, tall, flat-faced, carved long ago by hands neither human nor elven. The edges of its surface bore faint runes, half faded, half glowing with a soft green luminescence. Marina gasped. "It wasn't like this before. The stone never shone." "It's awakened," Geralt said quietly. "Your spirit must have anchored itself here." She stepped closer, then stopped as if an invisible barrier pressed upon her chest. This was where I met it. The first time, Geralt circled the stone. The runes pulsed faintly at his passing. The energy radiating from them felt like a slow inhale and exhale, steady, deliberate. He knelt beside a cluster of tracks in the frost, frowning. Something's moved through here recently. Heavy but not solid. Almost drifting. A wraith? No. He brushed aside the frost with a gauntleted hand. Wraiths don't leave imprints like this. These are impressions. Residue of a form that crosses between the material and the immaterial. Marina shuddered. It means it's gaining strength. It means it's preparing, Geralt corrected. Spirits don't manifest without purpose. Something about the symbols scratched at his memory. Fragments of druidic lore, warnings about elder beings tied to forests older than any kingdom. He traced a line down one rune. It flickered brighter at his touch. At once, a whisper curled through the clearing. Not wind, not breath. A voice, soft, layered, carried as though from beneath the earth and above the canopy all at once. Marina. The woman froze, every muscle locked. Geralt stepped in front of her. Stay behind me. The whisper came again, drifting between the trees like smoke. You return after so long. Marina's hand found Geralt's sleeve. She clung to it. It knows I'm here. It always did, Geralt said. Now it wants you to listen. A rustle stirred overhead. Branches swayed though no breeze touched them. From the shadows between the birches, a shape materialized. Not a full form, but the echo of one. As if the darkness had taken the shape of a tall figure, its outline wavering like mist. Geralt drew his silver sword, the metal reflecting the faint green glow of the runes. The shadow halted, its form rippling, its edges drifting like smoke pulled by a distant current. The voice emerged again, deeper now. You denied the pact. Marina swallowed hard, stepping back. I made no pact. The shadow twisted slowly toward her. You accepted companionship. You accepted knowledge. And then you fled, child of morning. You owe what was promised. Geralt's grip tightened. She owes nothing. You tricked her. The spirit turned its shifting face toward him. Though it had no features, he felt a cold regard move across him like a blade of winter. Witcher, hunter of beasts, this is no matter of your kind. Anything hunting a child becomes my matter, Geralt replied. The spirit's form wavered, darkening. The runes on the stone flared brighter, casting long shadows across the ground. Marina whispered, Geralt. Its voice. It didn't sound like this before. Before, Geralt said, you were not standing between it and what it believes is its due. The shadow raised an arm, elongated, insubstantial, and pointed toward Marina. You carry what belongs to me. You carried her into the world. But she is mine to guide. Geralt stepped forward, sword angled. Elin isn't going anywhere with you. A sound like a low tremor passed through the clearing. The shadow spread wider, its form peeling away from the trees, gaining substance, slowly, painfully, as though straining through invisible chains. Geralt recognized the signs. It's bound to something, a pact, a seal. That stone keeps it from taking full shape. Marina looked at the glowing runes, horror dawning. Geralt, I didn't create that seal. No, Geralt murmured, scanning the runes again. But someone did. Someone who knew this creature. Someone who made a different bargain entirely. The spirit's voice softened, almost mournful. You shattered the bond. You severed trust. Now the child calls to me. She seeks me, even as she dreams. You cannot stop her. None of you can. Geralt stepped closer to the spirit's shifting edge. Why now? You waited years. Why move against her only days ago? The air thickened. Frost began to form across the stone's base, spreading like veins of ice. Because the child awakens. Morena's breath caught. Awakens? What does that mean? Before the spirit could answer, the forest floor trembled. A long fissure cracked through the frost, snaking from the spirit's feet toward the stone. Light surged from the runes, bright, blinding. Geralt shielded his eyes. When the flare faded, the shadowy form had dissolved completely. The forest fell utterly silent. Geralt lowered his hand, scanning the clearing. It's gone, he muttered. Withdrawn, but not far. Morena wrapped her arms around herself. I didn't know it could do that. I didn't know it was bound, which means someone hid part of this story from you. The spirit's not free, and that makes it more dangerous. But who would bind it? She whispered. Geralt looked toward the darkened path leading back to the village. His instincts twisted sharply as if pointing him toward a truth he had not yet seen. There's only one reason a spirit this old would be restrained, he said. Someone didn't trust it. Someone wanted to control it. Morena stared at him. But who? Geralt met her gaze. That, he said, is what we must learn, before the creature gathers enough strength to break the seal entirely. Behind them, the ancient stone pulsed one final time, dim, weary, as though warning them that the forest was shifting. Night had only just begun. Geralt and Morena left the clearing in grim silence, the echo of the spirit's words lingering like smoke that refused to disperse. Branches scraped together overhead as though whispering warnings to one another. Each step carried them deeper into a sense of watching, a slow tightening of the forest's breath. Morena kept glancing over her shoulder. It never spoke of awakening, she murmured. Never hinted that Elin had any gift. If I had known. You didn't, Geralt said, and regret won't help her now. But it sought her from the moment she was born. Geralt, what kind of awakening could a child so young possess? Geralt didn't answer. He had ideas, none comforting. The girl's murmured words in her sleep, the instinctive recognition of him, the bond forming between her and the spirit. Such things were not whims of dreams. They emerged from the forest's edge into the pale stretch of early dawn. Frost coated the grass in white crystals, shimmering faintly as though touched by unnatural light. Morena pulled her cloak closer around her as they approached her cottage. Footsteps crunched ahead. A man waited near her door. It was the village elder, Tomor, a broad-shouldered man with a graying beard and eyes hardened by too many winters. When he spotted Geralt, his jaw tightened. So, Tomor said, you finally brought the Witcher to poke around our woods. Tell me, has he found the curse yet? Or is it something the two of you conjured together? Enough, Morena snapped, though her voice trembled. You have no right. I've every right, Tomor growled. Last night 3 goats were found dead, their eyes gone, their bodies twisted like something toyed with them. Folks say your spirit did it. Geralt studied him carefully. And what do you think? Tomor huffed. I think this started when she returned to the village. Her and that child. Geralt stepped forward. Children don't kill livestock. Maybe not, Tomor muttered. But monsters drawn to them do. His gaze slid to Geralt. You're here to fix this, then fix it. Because if that child brings danger upon us, the village will not wait for your blade to decide her fate. Marina paled. You wouldn't dare. Try me, Tomor said darkly. Then he turned and stomped away. Marina sagged against the cottage wall, breath shaking. They blame her. They'll turn on her if anything else happens. Not if I end this first, Geralt said. He opened the door, gesturing her inside. Rest while you can. At dusk, we search again. But neither rested. Geralt paced the small room, piecing the clues together. A bound forest spirit, ancient, a forgotten pact, a child awakening to some latent ability, a village on edge, and the stone, glowing, pulsing with an incomplete binding. There was something Marina had not said, something the spirit hinted at, something the runes whispered. Marina sat at the table, hands clasped tightly, staring into the lantern's flame. Geralt, when I fled the spirit, I didn't simply run. I tried to break the bond outright. A druid, Tarok, gave me a charm to... He said force alone cannot break an old promise. It can only change it. Geralt stopped pacing. Change it how? I thought it meant the spirit would lose its claim. Her voice quivered. But what if it didn't? What if the promise shifted to Elin? That possibility settled heavily in the air. Old pacts rarely vanished. They reshaped themselves like water seeking a new channel. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Geralt asked. Because I didn't believe it until last night, she whispered. Until I saw the runes awaken. Geralt exhaled through his teeth. We must speak to this druid. Marina shook her head. He's gone. Dead years now. I buried the charm with him. Geralt's expression darkened. Another path closed. They were interrupted by a gentle knock. Lisa, the widow, pushed open the door and peeked inside. Marina, she said softly. Elin. She wants to see you. Marina rose instantly. Geralt followed them to Lisa's home, where Aelin sat on the floor near the hearth, hugging her knees. She lifted her gaze as they entered. The singing came back, she said quietly, but not in my dreams this time. Geralt knelt before her. When? Just before sunrise. She pointed toward the shuttered window. It called from there. It didn't scratch the walls, just said my name. Did you answer? Geralt asked. She shook her head. I hid under the blanket, but I could feel it. Waiting. Geralt nodded. Good girl. Ellen's eyes drifted to her mother. Mama, is the forest angry? Marina hesitated, then smoothed the girl's hair. He's troubled, but Geralt will help us. The child leaned into her mother's arms, trembling slightly. Geralt watched them, mother and daughter, bound not just by blood, but by the shadow of an ancient mistake. When Elin finally fell asleep again, they stepped outside. The sky had brightened, though the distant forest remained shrouded in a perpetual gray. Geralt crossed his arms. This spirit, it's not only calling her. That means the bond isn't one-sided. You think she feels drawn to it? Marina whispered. More than that, Geralt said. She may be unconsciously answering. Marina looked sick. How do we stop it? By removing its anchor, Geralt said. That stone. It both binds and empowers it. We need to understand the runes and whoever carved them. Marina frowned. There's only one person in the village who would know such things. Someone who studied old symbols before giving it up. Geralt raised a brow. Who? Tomor. The name dropped like a stone into water. Geralt's jaw tightened. The elder knows about the binding? He must, Marina whispered. His father tended the forest shrine decades ago. Tomor would have learned the lore. Geralt's eyes narrowed. Then he's hiding something. And he's hiding it well. Their next step became unavoidable. We speak to him tonight, Geralt said, before the spirit does anything more. Marina nodded shakily. I'll follow your lead. They parted for the day's brief hours. Geralt sharpened his blades, prepared potions, and studied the faint symbols he had etched from memory onto parchment. Dusk approached with slow, heavy steps, each minute stretching thinner than the last. When night finally draped its mantle across the village, Geralt and Marina walked toward Thomor's home. Shadows gathered beneath the eaves. The wind crept between houses with a peculiar hush, as though the village itself held its breath. Thomor opened his door before they could knock, as if expecting them. His expression was grim. So, he said, you finally realized there's more to the forest than frightened tales? Geralt met his gaze squarely. You know the spirit, and you know the binding stone. Thomor's eyes flicked to Marina. Of course I do. My father helped bind it. Silence crashed into the room like cold water. You lied, Marina whispered. Because some truths do not lighten burdens, they sharpen them. Geralt stepped inside. Then sharpen ours. Tell me everything. Thomor shut the door, and the night deepened around them, waiting for what was to come. Inside Thomor's home, the fire burned low, casting long, wavering shadows across the wooden walls. The elder stood with his back to the flames, arms crossed, gaze fixed on Geralt and Marina, as if weighing whether truth would doom them or set them free. His jaw tightened, then loosened, a man wrestling with old burdens. My father, Thomor began, voice rough, was guardian of the old shrine in the forest. Not a druid, just a keeper of traditions, the last in a line that remembered the spirit's name long after others forgot it. He looked toward the shuttered window, as though expecting the darkness outside to listen. It is called Shael-eth, an ancient one, older than the village, older than men in these parts. Marina blinked, startled. He never told me its name. Spirits seldom do, Geralt murmured. Names give power. Thomor nodded grimly. Shael-eth was once benevolent. It watched over the forest, kept beasts at bay, blighted no crops, asked nothing but small offerings. But as generations passed, the bond between spirit and shrine weakened. Folk forgot. Some mocked it, and a forgotten spirit is a wounded one. He drew a slow breath. My father believed Shael-eth would fade peacefully, but instead, it grew hungry, lonely. It began calling out to people who wandered too near, quiet at first, then stronger. A handful vanished. Others returned half mad, speaking of shadows that whispered promises. Marina's hands trembled. It found me when I was only a girl. Thomor's gaze softened, not kindly but with understanding. You were not the first it selected, but you were the first to accept its company willingly, without fear. She lowered her eyes. I was naive. You were a child, Thomor replied. Children seek, and Shael-eth appeared wondrous before it grew desperate. Geralt stepped forward. How did your father bind it? Thomor moved to a chest, pulled it open, and withdrew a small wooden box. Inside was a fragment of stone, engraved with the same runes Geralt had seen on the shrine's monolith. With these markings, Thomor said, handing Geralt the fragment, druidic sigils meant to limit its manifestation, weaken its form, anchor it to the shrine. It prevented Shael-eth from leaving the forest fully, but not from whispering beyond it. Geralt turned the fragment in his hand. The carvings were precise, deliberate, ancient. The binding is incomplete. Yes, Thomor's mouth twisted bitterly, My father lacked the full ritual. No one living knew it anymore. The best he could do was tether the spirit. But his binding required stability. No tampering, no half-made bargains from wandering children. Marina flinched as Tomor leveled a steady stare at her. When you formed your companionship with Shealith, it found a gap in the tether. When you tried to sever the bond using an incomplete charm, it created a fracture in the seal, one the spirit has pressed against ever since. Marina's face paled. I didn't know. I was told it would free me. Geralt interjected. It didn't free you. It redirected the claim. Tomor nodded sharply. To your daughter. The words hung heavy between them. Marina's voice broke. Then Shealith seeks to take her in my place. Not take, Tomor corrected grimly. Claim. He believes the child is its rightful heir, its student, its successor. Geralt frowned. Spirits don't seek heirs unless they sense power. Tomor sank heavily into a chair. Yelin is gifted, anyone can see it. Even a witcher, I wager. Geralt recalled the girl's manner, her calm under fear, the strange resonance of her voice when she murmured unknown words. She is different. Marina clutched the edge of the table. You didn't need to, Tomor said. Blood carries old echoes. Gifts pass unseen. You sought the spirit as a girl because you felt its presence. Elin hears it too, stronger still. Silence again. Thick, weighted. Geralt spoke first. If the binding is incomplete, how do we finish it? Tomor's expression darkened. We cannot. My father took the missing runes to his grave, and even if we knew them, Shealith has grown powerful again. The seal weakens. I fear it will break entirely within days. Then the spirit will walk freely, Geralt said. Aye, Tomor replied, and it will come for the girl. Marina covered her face with her hands. Geralt, what do we do? How do we stop it? Geralt stood motionless for a moment, listening to the wind press against the walls. We must find how Shealith chose its path. Spirits don't turn without reason. Something changed. Something must have driven it to hunger for a child apprentice. Tomor hesitated. There is something else, something I never told anyone. Geralt's eyes narrowed. Speak. Tomor's voice dropped to a grim hush. Years ago, before Shealith weakened, before my father died, there was a prophecy tied to the spirit, an old druidic verse. My father feared it. He believed Shealith sought not just companionship, but a vessel. Marina stiffened. A vessel for what? For its fading essence, Tomor said. Spirits like Shealith do not die. They transform, renew themselves through chosen hosts. If Elin is truly awakening to a gift, Shealith sees a future for itself inside her. A cold dread crawled through the room. Geralt spoke firmly. Prophecy or no prophecy, I won't allow a child to be taken. Marina's breath quivered. Can it be destroyed? Tomor looked sharply at Geralt. A spirit that ancient? Not by simple steel, but weakened by the seal. Perhaps. If attacked at the right moment. Geralt nodded slowly. At the shrine. Yes, Tomor said. Only there. Then we go tonight. Geralt shook his head. Not yet. We need the spirit to reveal its true form. It must stretch itself beyond the boundary of the seal. Only then can I strike. And how do we force that? Marina asked. Tomor hesitated again. Geralt already guessed the answer. It will reveal itself, the elder said quietly, if the child is present. Marina recoiled as if burned. No, absolutely not. I will not use her as bait. Geralt's voice lowered, steady as stone. It may come for her regardless, with or without us. At least this way we control the moment. Morena shook her head violently, tears in her eyes. I won't let her face it. I won't. A sound split the night. A distant cry. High, piercing. A child's cry. Ellen's. Morena froze, terror hollowing her eyes. Geralt was already moving. The spirit isn't waiting for us, he said, throwing open the door. It's already here. Morena bolted from the house before Tomor or Geralt could stop her, her cloak billowing behind her as she stumbled into the icy night. Geralt overtook her within moments, catching her arm before she could sprint blindly across the village square. Slow down, he said sharply. You'll lead it straight to her. Terror twisted her features. She screamed. Geralt, she screamed. And I heard, he replied, pulling her into the shadow of a house. But if Shale Eth has taken shape, you rushing in won't save her. Morena trembled, fighting the instinct to run. Geralt released her only when she steadied herself by sheer force of will. Tomor arrived moments later, panting, lantern shaking in his grasp. Her cry came from the north side, he said, Lysa's home. Geralt had already guessed. The spirit would strike where fear ran deepest. He drew his silver blade, its edge gleaming like frozen moonlight, and motioned for silence. They moved swiftly, slipping through narrow lanes between sleeping houses. As they approached Lisa's door, the cottage door hung open, groaning softly as the wind pressed against it. No candle burned inside. The night itself seemed to lean inward, thick with a cold, not born of winter. Morena's breath hitched. Elin. Geralt stalked forward, blade at the ready. He stepped inside the cottage first. The hearth still smoldered with dying warmth. A chair lay toppled, a clay bowl shattered on the floor. Near the far wall, Lisa knelt on trembling hands, gasping as though her breath had been stolen from her chest. Her eyes widened when she saw the Witcher. She was standing by the window, Lisa stammered. She said she heard singing again. I turned for a moment, just a moment, and then the shadows moved. They reached for her, pulled her through the doorway like mist. Morena nearly collapsed. Where did it take her? Lisa pointed shakily toward the darkened path beyond the house. Into the trees. Geralt's expression hardened like tempered steel. It's accelerating. Whatever the spirit needs, it needs soon. He strode out into the open air, following the faint remnants of a trail, subtle impressions in the frost, unnatural streaks where shadow had brushed the ground. Morena followed, tears streaking silently down her cheeks, but her steps fierce with determination. Tomor brought up the rear, lantern held high. If it's taken her toward the shrine, the spirit means to break the seal tonight. Then we don't let it, Geralt said. They advanced through the edge of the forest, where frost clung even thicker, coating every branch in a sheen of pale silver. The trees grew denser, hunched forward as though eager to obscure the path. The deeper they went, the colder the air felt, not the chill of winter, but the hollow cold of places where light struggled to exist. Soon they found the first sign, a faint, shimmering thread of silver mist drifting low to the ground. Morena knelt beside it. Her hand passed through the tendril, and she shivered. She's answering even while awake. Not fully awake, Geralt corrected. The spirit has her caught between sleep and awareness. It's guiding her, like a sleepwalker. Tomor's lantern flickered wildly. If the child reaches the shrine in that state, Shaleth may bind her completely. Geralt's jaw tightened. Not while I still breathe. He pressed forward at a run. The forest churned with a strange hum, low and resonant, vibrating through the ground itself. It grew louder with each step, thickening the air until it felt like pushing against water. Marina stumbled beside him but persisted, her face set with raw terror and fierce resolve. The trail led them to a narrow ravine. At the bottom, water once flowed through a shallow stream bed, now frozen over with a glassy layer of ice. Across that ice moved a small figure, slow, dreamlike, barefoot. "Elin!" Marina screamed. The girl did not turn. She wandered as though entranced, her white nightdress glowing faintly under the moonlight. Her hair drifted behind her as though moved by a whispering wind. A tall shape stood beside her, not fully formed. Its body wavered like smoke, but taller than any man, limbs long and shifting, a crown of shadowed antlers rising from its indistinct head. Shaleth. Its voice rippled through the ravine. "She comes willingly?" At last, Marina tried to run down the slope, but Geralt grabbed her arm. "No, you'll break the ice and drown both of you." She struggled, but he held fast. Tomor raised his lantern, voice shaking. "Shaleth, release the girl." The spirit turned its faceless head toward the elder. "Child of the last guardian," the voice murmured, layered like wind over deep water. "You have no authority here." Its shadowed arm extended toward Elin, circling her shoulders with a tendril of darkness. The girl did not flinch. She did not even... "Elin, look at me. Wake up! Wake up!" Geralt sheathed his steel sword and drew the silver one again, its runes casting a cold gleam across the ice. He eyed the frozen stream bed, calculating. "The ice is thin," he murmured, "but I can cross if I move fast." "What about Elin?" Tomor asked. "We'll reach her before she reaches the shrine," Geralt said, "and before the spirit pulls her under completely." He stepped down toward the ravine. At once, Shaleth's form sharpened, its edges gaining weight, substance. The spirit lifted one long arm, pointing at him. "Turn back, Witcher. This is not your battle." "It is," Geralt answered, "if a child's life hangs in it." He took another step. The spirit's presence thickened. The ice groaned beneath Geralt's boots, but he remained steady. "You cannot harm me," Shaleth whispered. "Your blade bites only flesh. I am bound to the ancient wood and woven through its shadow." Geralt narrowed his eyes. Everything has a breaking point. Then he sprang forward. The ice cracked beneath him, but held long enough for him to slide across its surface. Shaleth's form rippled violently, as if taken by surprise. It swept a dark tendril toward him, striking the ice mere inches from his feet. Frost exploded upward, showering him in shards. Geralt reached Elin, scooping her into his arm. Her body was limp but warm, her eyes half open yet unfocused. Marina screamed from the ravine's edge. "Is she alive?" "Barely conscious," Geralt replied, "but I've got her." Shaleth recoiled, tendrils shuddering. "You trespass," it hissed, its voice vibrating the air. "Release what is mine." "She belongs to no one," Geralt growled. He turned back toward the slope, but the ice moaned again, splitting. A jagged crack streaked between him and the safety of the ravine wall. Shaleth's form surged upward, towering, no longer smoke but a figure, cloaked in shadowed wood and winter fog. And for the first time, Geralt felt the true weight. "You cannot save her," the spirit intoned. "A promise once made is a promise bound by the roots of the world." Geralt tightened his grip on Elin, adjusting his stance as the ice sank beneath him. "Then," he said, raising his blade, I'll cut those roots. The ice groaned like a wounded beast beneath Geralt's feet, each crack widening as if urged on by the spirit towering before him. Shealith's form coiled and uncoiled, its shadowed limbs dragging streaks of frost through the air. The temperature plummeted. Even Geralt felt the cold gnaw through his armor like teeth. He shifted Aylin's small weight in his arm. Her eyes fluttered, clouded by enchantment. "Geralt," she whispered faintly, though whether she saw him or some vision in the dream haze, he could not tell. "Stay with me," he murmured. Shealith rose taller still, stretching like a tree growing in moments rather than seasons. Antlers of dark root twisted from its head, scraping the night sky. Its voice echoed through the ravine, deeper than before, resonant as distant thunder. "The vessel awakens. She must cross." Geralt positioned himself between the spirit and the girl. "Over my dead body." A ripple passed through Shealith's form, equal parts irritation and sorrow. "This is not a battle for blades, Witcher. You stand against the current of destiny." Geralt bared his teeth. "Destiny's had poor luck with me." Before Shealith could answer, the spirit lashed out. A tendril of shadow swept across the ice, cleaving a long gash that spidered toward Geralt's boots. He leaped aside, skidding across the slick surface, clutching Aylin tightly. Tomor shouted from the ravine's edge, "Geralt, the spirit feeds on the seal. The closer you fight to the shrine, the stronger it becomes." Geralt grimaced. "Then weaken its focus." "By how?" "Distract it." The elder hesitated only a heartbeat before raising his lantern high and shouting ancient words, phrases carried down from forest guardians long past. His voice cracked with fear, yet held firm. Shealith twisted. Its attention snapped toward Thomor, shadows thickening around its antlers. "The last keeper's son," it growled. "You meddle in what you cannot grasp." Its distraction gave Geralt a moment, a precious one. He ran, boots sliding, seeking a thicker patch of ice. Marina's voice echoed faintly from the ravine above, trembling with panic and hope. "Geralt, bring her up. Please hurry." But reaching the ravine wall was not enough. Shealith's presence pressed heavily against the boundaries of the seal. The spirit was manifesting far more solidly than before. If it completed that transformation while Aylin lay in Geralt's arms, her mind would slip entirely into its grasp. Geralt felt Aylin stir again. She lifted a trembling hand toward the spirit. "He calls for me," she whispered. Geralt seized her wrist gently. "Don't listen, don't look." "But he sounds lonely." That chilled Geralt more deeply than the cold. Shealith spoke again, but this time its tone softened, a hollow lament threading through its words. "Child of promise, you hear what others cannot. You sense what your mother denied. Come and learn. Come and let the old world breathe again." Aylin's pupils dilated. Her breathing steadied into a trance-like rhythm. Marina screamed from above, voice breaking. "Aylin, baby, wake up!" Shealith turned its faceless head toward the sound. Its attention fracturing gave Geralt another heartbeat. He used it well. He drew a sign in the air with his free hand. "Ard!" The blast of force cracked outward, shattering a wide circle of ice around the spirit's lower form. Water surged up in a freezing mist. Shealith recoiled slightly as the ice beneath its feet destabilized, but the spirit, instead, it expanded, tendrils anchoring into the very shadows of the ravine walls. "Futile," the spirit thundered. "The seal breaks. The child completes what was begun long ago." Geralt's medallion shook violently. The spirit's power surged, rippling through the frozen stream bed. The ice beneath Geralt fractured again, splitting into shards. He slid toward the widening crevice. Snow and frost swept around him like storm winds. His boots scraped desperately for grip. Tomor shouted, "Geralt, jump now!" Geralt adjusted his stance, cradled Elin to his chest, and waited for the ice beneath him to crack 1 inch more. Timing would decide life or death. The spirit lunged, an immense shadowed limb sweeping across the ravine. Geralt leaped. For a suspended moment, man and child soared above darkness. Then Geralt's gauntleted fingers caught the rim of the ravine wall. The impact jolted his arm with sharp pain, but he held tight. "Elin!" Marina reached down, tears streaking her face, her fingers trembling as she grasped her daughter's small wrist. Geralt pushed upward with all remaining strength. Tomor seized his other arm, heaving him onto solid ground just as the ice below collapsed fully, plunging into black water. Shaleth roared, not a cry of pain, but a furious, rising storm of sound. You delay only the inevitable. The child's essence calls to me. The seal cracks. Soon no hands of flesh will keep us apart. The forest seemed to twist with the spirit's rage. Branches shook. Frost crawled up the ravine walls. The air itself trembled. Geralt rose unsteadily, silver blade still in hand. "We need to move. Now." Marina clutched Elin close, rocking her, whispering her name as if trying to pull her soul back from some distant path. The girl murmured faintly, still trapped between worlds. Tomor's lantern flickered so violently the flame nearly went out. "We cannot outrun the spirit." "No," Geralt answered, "but we can choose where to confront it." "The shrine?" "Exactly," Geralt said. "The spirit is strongest there, but also bound there. That's our only chance to sever its hold." Shaleth's form flickered violently below, shifting into and out of substance as it regathered itself. It would not be delayed long. Geralt turned to Marina. "Take Elin. Stay behind me. Keep her awake. If she slips deeper into the trance, Shaleth will control her mind." Marina nodded, though terror darkened her eyes. "I'll keep her close. I swear it." Tomor gripped his lantern. "I know a faster path to the shrine, a hunter's route." "Then lead," Geralt said. They started running, through trees that groaned as if alive, past branches that seemed to clutch at their cloaks, over roots that rose like serpents from the earth. The forest hummed, an unbearable resonance that vibrated in their bones. Elin stirred in her mother's arms. "He's coming," she whispered. "We know," Geralt said. "No." The child's voice cracked. "He's already here." The ground shook. A surge of shadow burst through the trees behind them, sweeping like a tide of darkness. Shaleth had regained its form, larger, faster, more terrible than before. The chase began. Geralt drew another sign. "Yrden!" A circle of glowing runes erupted behind them. The spirit crossed it and the air rippled. Shaleth slowed, its limbs dragging as though trapped in thick tar. Geralt didn't wait to see how long it would hold. They raced onward, the shrine's clearing drawing nearer. The monolith's faint green glow pulsed between the trees like a distant heartbeat. But even from afar, the light wavered. Cracks of dimming power ran through the stone's runes. The seal was failing. Shaleth's voice rolled through the forest like thunder. "Bring me the child," Geralt shouted over his shoulder. "Move!" They broke into the clearing just as the monolith flared once, weakly like the last breath of a dying flame. The final confrontation was moments away, and they burst into the clearing, breath ragged, hearts pounding with the knowledge that they were seconds ahead of an ancient and relentless force. Above them the moon hovered low, veiled by drifting clouds, its pale glow falling unevenly across the shrine. The monolith loomed at the center, runes flickering feebly like embers struggling to cling to warmth. Geralt scanned the clearing with quick, measuring eyes. The ground around the stone was etched with old sigils, some intact, some broken by root and time. The remnants of ages past lingered here, brittle offerings, forgotten talismans, bones of animals laid long ago, all symbols of a pact now decayed. Behind him, Marina stumbled into view, clutching Elin tightly. Tomor arrived moments later, lantern shaking in his grasp. "Set her down," Geralt ordered gently. "Hold her by the stone. Keep her awake." Marina knelt, her breath coming in sharp gasps. Elin blinked slowly, her gaze unfocused, lips murmuring words too soft for them to hear, but unmistakably threaded with the same strange tone as before, a mixture of song and whisper, old as the forest's roots. Geralt approached the monolith, pressing his palm to its cold surface. The runes flickered beneath his touch, weak, failing. Even the stone seemed to tremble, caught in the struggle of holding back a power greater than itself. Thomor stood beside him. "The seal is dying." "No," Geralt said, "it's being broken." The forest quivered. A wave of cold swept across the clearing, extinguishing Thomor's lantern flame. Shadows lengthened unnaturally. The sound of cracking branches echoed like distant bones, snapping beneath great weight. Then a voice rolled through the woods, vast and hollow. "Witcher, Keeper's son, Child-bearer." Shaleth stepped into the clearing. Its form was clearer now, no longer shifting mist, but a towering silhouette of shadowed wood, bark-like ridges lining its limbs, a crown of twisted antlers. Its chest glowed faintly with a sickly green light, akin to the runes on the stone, but stained, corrupted. Geralt placed himself between the spirit and the others. "Enough," he growled. "Your claim ends here." Shaleth did not halt. Its steps stirred no sound, but each one made the earth tremble. "The child is mine. She carries what her mother denied. She is the vessel chosen by the old ways." Marina's voice cracked. "You cannot take her. You lied to me, twisted my understanding, used my loneliness against me." For a strange moment, Shaleth paused. "I offered companionship. You accepted. I offered knowledge. You accepted. You gave meaning to the fading forest. You were the first to hear my call in an age." The spirit's tone deepened, heavy with something like sorrow. "But you fled, and when you fled, the bond changed. Your child is the ember of what could not be completed." Aelin stirred, lifting her head. He means no harm," she murmured dreamily. Marina flinched as though stabbed. "Aelin, look at me. Listen to my voice, only my voice." But the girl's gaze drifted toward Shaleth, drawn by invisible strands. Geralt stepped forward, silver blade raised. "You will not pass." Shaleth shifted, towering over him, shadows rippling outward like waves. "You wield steel? I am older than steel." Geralt didn't bother answering. He lunged. The first strike swept cleanly toward Shaleth's torso. The blade passed through, but not as through mist. It slowed, meeting resistance like cutting through water, thickened by centuries of memory. The spirit reeled slightly, not from pain, but from surprise. Geralt pressed forward, swinging again, using signs to enhance his momentum. "Yrden!" The glyph flashed beneath his feet, spreading across the dirt in a glowing circle. Shaleth stumbled into its radius, and its form wavered, struggling to maintain cohesion. The spirit hissed. You bind me with runes of the lesser age. He struck again, this time carving through a tethering limb of shadow. The severed tendril dissipated like smoke in a gust, but the spirit recoiled. Tomor stepped closer to Elin, shielding her. Geralt, the runes, look! The monolith pulsed violently, cracks webbing outward from its core. The seal was failing faster now that Shaleth had manifested fully. The spirit drew strength from its breaking, feeding on its unraveling. Shaleth thrust out both arms. A gale of cold wind surged forth, shattering Geralt's Earden circle. The Witcher staggered but held his ground. Marina cried out as Elin suddenly writhed, clutching her head. Mama, the singing. It's too loud. Geralt glanced over his shoulder, but only for a second. Shaleth seized the moment. A tendril lashed out, striking him square in the chest. The force hurled him across the clearing. He crashed into a tree, gasping as his ribs groaned beneath armor. Geralt! Marina screamed, but Geralt raised a hand to show he yet lived. Though his vision blurred, Shaleth advanced toward the monolith. Toward Elin, Tomor, desperate, lifted his lantern and hurled it at the spirit. The glass shattered against Shaleth's torso, flames licking through the shadowy form. The fire dimmed in seconds. Bold, the spirit murmured, but futile. Tomor raised a broken branch like a spear. You will not take the girl. Shaleth's eyes, or the space where eyes should be, glowed with cold derision. I already have her mind. Ellen gasped sharply. Her small body arched. Marina sobbed, holding her tightly. Geralt, help us. The Witcher forced himself up, spitting blood. His medallion vibrated violently. The spirit's power filled the clearing so completely it felt like drowning in darkness. Geralt staggered toward the monolith, toward the shaking stone, toward the crumbling seal. Then a realization struck him, a pattern he had overlooked. The runes on they were incomplete forms of a larger sigil, a circle missing its counterpoints. Geralt's heart quickened. Tomor, he shouted. Your father, the missing runes. Did he ever describe them to you? Tomor blinked in shock. Only fragments. Symbol of unity. Symbol of severance. Symbol of the forest's breath. Geralt drew 3 swift signs in the air. Earden's cousin forms, never meant for combat but for old world rituals. The symbols shimmered faintly. Tell me how they looked, Geralt demanded. Tomor recited broken descriptions, half-remembered diagrams. Geralt wove them together with signs, shaping a lattice of glowing lines above the cracked monolith. Shaleth turned sharply. Stop. Geralt ignored it. He pressed his palms to the monolith. The runes flared to life. Shaleth roared, shadows convulsing. Marina clutched her daughter, shielding her from the spiraling winds. Tomor fell to his knees, whispering old prayers. The clearing erupted with blinding green light, and Geralt felt the seal, long fractured, long weakened, begin to reform. Shaleth lunged. A shadowed arm swept towards the Witcher with killing force, but the monolith ignited fully, runes blazing like a star reborn. For the first time, Shaleth's voice carried fear. No! Geralt opened his eyes. Too late, he said. The runes exploded outward, and the spirit screamed. The explosion of light tore the clearing in two, a blinding column of emerald brilliance that surged upward like a pillar supporting the sky itself. For a heartbeat, the world was nothing but radiance and sound. The crack of splitting air, the raw shriek of something ancient being forced back into chains it had fought centuries to escape. Geralt braced himself, teeth clenched, palms pressed to the trembling monolith. The raw magic coursing through it, jolted up his arms like lightning given form. Every nerve begged him to. If he faltered, even for an instant, the binding would collapse, and Shaleth would unleash itself upon them all. Behind him, Marina shielded Elin beneath her cloak, though the child peered through the crook of her mother's arm, eyes wide, caught between dread and fascination. Thomor crouched low, gripping a fallen branch, his body taut, as though fighting the urge to flee. The spirit writhed in the storm of light, its once fluid form now jerking in broken spasms, limbs snapping between solidity and smoke. The crown of antlers dissolved, reformed, dissolved again. Shaleth's voice roared through the clearing, a terrible bellow that cracked against the stones. "Witcher, you cannot, you will not," Geralt roared back, forcing the glowing sigils into alignment. "Get back into the seal!" The runes blazed brighter. Shaleth staggered, dragged inch by inch toward the monolith. Its form thinned, stretched like a shadow at sunset. "The child is chosen!" it shrieked. "She bears the gift. She bears the promise denied. Let her complete what was destined." Marina cried out, "No, you will not have her. You will never." Shaleth's head jerked toward her. The light exposed every contour of its shifting form. Wooden ribs turning to mist, hollow eyes glowing like dying lanterns. Its voice softened, twisting into something mournful, seductive. "Child-bearer, you took what was offered. You fled what you needed. Let me teach her what you never could." Geralt snarled, bending the magic harder. "Marina, don't listen." But Elin suddenly stiffened in her mother's arms. Her lips parted. A thread of glowing mist drifted from her mouth toward the spirit. Marina gasped. "Elin, no, stop!" Geralt's eyes widened. The spirit was pulling at the child's essence, her budding gift, her connection to the old ways. The seal was not enough. Shaleth had forged a bond through the girl's sleep, through her dreams, through her innocence, and now that bond acted like a bridge. "It's draining her," Geralt growled a curse. If he let go of the monolith, the entire binding ritual would collapse. If he did nothing, Aelin risked losing herself forever. "Aelin!" he shouted. "Fight it! Close your eyes! Pull back!" But the girl did not hear him. Her pupils glowed faintly green, reflecting the radiance of the monolith and the shadow of the spirit simultaneously. Marina clutched her daughter desperately. "Look at me, darling. Stay with me. Do not follow him. Do not listen." Shaleth extended a hand, now more solid, more terrible. From its fingertips, thin strands of shimmering shadow reached toward Aelin's drifting essence. "Come, vessel of renewal. Let us awaken the old forest together." Marina screamed and lunged, shielding Aelin's face with her hands. The tendrils recoiled for a heartbeat, but then surged forward again. Geralt's breathing ragged, muscles tearing under the strain of holding the sigils, bellowed at Thomor. "Break the bond between them. Shake her out of the trance." Thomor hesitated, only a second, then seized a handful of icy soil and brushed it across Aelin's forehead, chanting words passed down from guardian to guardian. Ancient words, wild words. Aelin gasped sharply, as though she had plunged into cold water. Her eyes refocused. The tendrils snapped. Shaleth reeled backward, shrinking violently. "No, no, she is mine!" Geralt felt the surge of weakness in the spirit's form. Now, this was the moment. He threw all remaining strength into the sigils. The runes flared in a brilliant lattice of interlocking forms. The monolith vibrated violently, humming like a struck bell. The ground shook. Trees bent. Frost shattered like brittle glass. Shealith shrieked, its form collapsing inward, drawn into itself as if swallowed by invisible chains. Its limbs twisted, dissolved, and reformed in smaller shapes each second. I will return. The promise holds. The child. Geralt pushed harder, his muscles, his vision blurred. The clearing erupted in one final burst of emerald light, and Shealith vanished. Not faded, not drifted away. Vanished, spun into the core of the monolith, trapped once more within the forest's ancient heart. The light died instantly. Darkness reclaimed the clearing. Geralt staggered backward, collapsing to one knee. The monolith now lay silent, its runes dim but stable, no longer flickering under strain. Tomor exhaled shakily, lowering his head. It's sealed. Gods preserve us. It's truly sealed. Marina sank beside Aelin, clutching her daughter close. Tears streamed anew, but now from relief. Aelin, my brave girl, are you hurt? Are you whole? Aelin blinked, dazed, then buried her face into her mother's shoulder. Mama, the singing is gone. Geralt leaned heavily on his sword, catching his breath. His ribs throbbed, his palms burned, his head spun, but victory, however fragile, had been won. Yet something felt wrong. The clearing was quiet, too quiet. No wind stirred the branches, no night birds sang. The forest held its breath not in peace, but in dread. Geralt rose slowly. The monolith's runes, though dormant, pulsed once faintly, as if warning. Tomor noticed too. Geralt, why does the stone still glow? We sealed it, didn't we? We did, Geralt said, but the spirit's last words. Marina clutched Aelin tighter. He said the promise holds. Geralt's eyes narrowed. A spirit bound can still claim what was freely given once. Bonds can change forms. Promises can linger long after they should die. Aelin lifted her head. Mama, he's quiet, but he's not gone. Not completely. Marina stiffened. You hear him still? No, Aelin whispered. Not him, just an echo, a memory. Geralt approached them, crouching to meet the girl's eyes. Aelin, you must answer truthfully. Do you feel him inside your mind? Even a whisper? She shook her head. No, he's far away, like a storm on the other side of the world. Good, but he knows my name, she whispered. A chill passed through all of them. Geralt rested a hand gently on the girl's shoulder. Names carry power, but knowledge alone is not enough for him now. You're safe. The seal will hold, at least for many years, if not a lifetime. Tomor nodded. The forest will sleep again. The spirit is weakened beyond recovery. Geralt rose. Perhaps. But spirits like Shealith don't die. They wait. Marina swallowed hard. For what? Geralt's expression darkened. For another mistake or another opportunity. Wind finally stirred the clearing, brushing past them with cold, almost cautious fingers. The danger had passed. But the story was not yet done, for the forest remembered. And so did Shealith. The forest did not resume its familiar night song until long after the monolith had gone dark. Even then, the sounds returned cautiously, as though the creatures of the wood feared waking something better left slumbering. Geralt stood in the clearing, watching the runes fade into the stone surface until they resembled nothing more than faint scratches. Yet the Witcher knew the truth. No mark made by druids vanished entirely. They merely retreated, waiting for the next call. Behind him, Marina held Aelin tightly, murmuring reassurances against the girl's hair. The child trembled, not from cold, but from the last echo of the spirit's presence fading from her bones. Tomor leaned on a tree, shoulders sagging with exhaustion. Geralt, Marina whispered, is it truly over? For tonight, he replied, and nights to come. Shaleth is bound again, but pacts like this, remnants, linger. Tomor stepped forward. If your weaving of the runes holds longer than my father's, perhaps generations will pass before the spirit stirs again. Geralt sheathed his sword with a weary motion. I didn't complete the lost symbols, only mimicked enough of the structure to force the seal closed. Whether it holds centuries or years depends on Shaleth's resolve. Marina looked stricken. Then we are not free. You are, Geralt assured her, so long as Elin grows apart from it, as long as she does not seek it. Elin lifted her head, eyes still glassy with lingering dreamlight. I won't, she whispered. I don't want to hear him ever again. Marina kissed her brow. And you won't, my sweet. You're safe now. Geralt studied the girl carefully. She seemed ordinary. Small shoulders, tangled hair, pale cheeks streaked with tears, but beneath her quiet demeanor lay something deeper. Not a gift pushed into her by Shaleth, but a spark born into her bloodline. She had resisted the spirit's pull. Few could have. We should leave the clearing, Tomor said, glancing toward the trees. The forest's quiet does not comfort me. Geralt nodded. Move. They walked through the forest in silence, the night's weight lifted, yet still pressing faintly at their heels. Only when the trees began to thin, when the first lights of the village flickered in sight, did Marina speak again. Geralt, when Shaleth spoke of me accepting companionship, of the promise, was he telling truth? Did I bind myself without knowing? Geralt kept his eyes forward. Children rarely understand what spirits want. Loneliness clouded the pact. You reached toward wonder. The spirit reached toward survival. There was no equality in that exchange. So I am to blame. No, Geralt said firmly. The spirit chose deceit. You chose escape. The consequences were twisted by forces older than either of you. She lowered her gaze. Then Elin suffers because of me. Geralt stopped, turning to face her. No. She suffers because a spirit used an old pact to hold on to life. You breaking free did not damn her. It saved her from becoming its apprentice years ago. Marina exhaled shakily. You sound certain? I've seen enough bargains to know truth when I hear it. By the time they reached the village's edge, dawn brushed the eastern sky in thin streaks of rose and gold. Tomor extinguished what remained of his lantern. Witcher, he said quietly, you have my thanks, and the thanks of those too. Afraid to speak it. Geralt gave a curt nod. See that the villagers leave Moraine in peace. Blame drives folk to foolishness. Tomor stiffened, shame crossing his features. It was fear, not malice. Fear becomes malice quickly when left to fester. Tomor bowed his head. Then I will stand for them both. My father served the forest. I will serve those who walked through its darkness tonight. Marina managed a tired smile. Thank you, Tomor. He returned it with the faint awkwardness of a man unaccustomed to apologies. Geralt continued deeper into the village toward Lisa's home. The widow stood at her doorstep, eyes swollen with worry, but brightening when she saw Marina carrying Aelin. She's safe, Marina breathed. Lisa pressed a hand to her chest. Praise the gods. Then she moved aside. Come in, all of you. Inside, warmth enveloped them. The small hearth crackled softly, filling the room with a comforting scent of burning pine. Marina laid Aelin gently onto a bed of quilts, The girl drifted into a peaceful sleep almost immediately, free at last from the whispered lullabies that stalked her dreams. Lisa approached Geralt with a steaming cup of broth. "You look like death warmed over." Geralt accepted it without comment. The warmth seeped through him, easing the cold lodged in his bones. Marina sat beside Elin, brushing a curl from her daughter's cheek. Now that the immediate danger had passed, her eyes shone with delayed fear. "Geralt," she said quietly, "what of her gift? Will it fade now that Shaleth is sealed?" "No," he answered. "Gifts never fade, but they can be shaped, guided, controlled." "By me?" she asked hesitantly. "No," Geralt said. "By someone trained. A druid, perhaps. She'll need to learn enough so that nothing can twist her gift in the future." Marina swallowed. "I will do whatever it takes." Geralt rested a hand on the back of a chair. "Then start by giving her a life free from spirits and ancient pacts." For a moment silence settled gently around them. Even Tomor, usually gruff and firm, seemed contemplative as he watched the sleeping child. Lisa approached Marina and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're welcome to stay here as long as needed." Marina nodded gratefully. Geralt set down the empty cup. "I'll check the seal again after rest. Make sure the binding held fully." "Will the spirit try to break it again tonight?" Tomor asked. "No," Geralt replied. "It exhausted itself. It'll sleep, maybe for decades." Marina closed her eyes. Relief washed over her. Geralt moved toward the doorway. "I'll return shortly." But Elin stirred. "Geralt," she murmured. He paused. Her eyes opened only halfway. "Thank you for finding me in the dark." Geralt's expression softened. "Rest. You've earned it." The girl smiled faintly, then slipped back into slumber. Outside, dawn broke fully. The village stirred cautiously as morning light spilled through the shutters. Geralt stepped into the cold air, lifting his face toward the clearing sky. Snow glimmered faintly on rooftops. Birds hesitated, then began to sing again. Yet uncertainty lingered. The spirit was sealed, yes, but its last words clung to Geralt's mind like the fading warmth of a dying fire. The promise holds. The child bears the gift. He disliked unresolved threads. They had a way of tugging themselves free when least expected. Still, he breathed deeply, letting the morning steadiness fill him. For now, the danger had passed, and children deserved mornings, not nightmares. He walked onward through the waking village, boots crunching lightly over frost. Roach waited patiently near a trough, ears flicking as Geralt approached. The mare... "A long night," Geralt muttered, patting her neck, "and not quite finished." He turned back toward the forest. The seal awaited inspection, and whatever truth it still held. The early sun rested low on the horizon, its pale rays melting the frost, clinging to the grass and branches. The village had begun to stir, though timidly, as if sensing the forest's unrest. Geralt walked the familiar path toward the shrine, Roach trailing behind him with quiet patience. The Witcher's stride was steady, though every muscle ached with the echoes of last night's battle. The forest greeted him with strained silence. Birds perched but did not sing. The wind brushed the tops of the trees, yet never touched the earth. The ground itself felt tense beneath his boots, as though waiting, watching. When he reached the clearing, the monolith stood unchanged in form, yet something in its presence unsettled him. The runes were dim, but not entirely dormant. Their faint glow pulsed irregularly, like an exhausted heartbeat. Geralt stepped closer, laying his palm against the cool stone. A subtle vibration passed through his gauntlet, neither strong nor alarming, but persistent. The forest spirit was bound but not asleep. It lingered, wounded, weakened, yet restless beneath its new prison. Still breathing, he muttered. He studied the arrangement of the runes again. Their pattern was stable but incomplete, much like a wound stitched hastily, strong enough to hold but not without vulnerability. The missing symbols, those lost in Tomor's memory, could not simply be guessed. They were remnants of a lore older than most living druids. Still, Geralt had done enough to halt Shale Eath's resurgence. That would have to suffice. He circled the monolith slowly. The ground bore the scars of last night's struggle. Frost shattered into brittle shards, roots torn from earth. The remnants of each mark told a story. The spirit had fought desperately, and its rage had not yet faded from the air. Geralt knelt, touching the ground. A faint whisper brushed his ear, not Shaleth's voice, not words, merely an echo like the memory of a sigh. He stood abruptly. "Enough," he said aloud. "Your time has passed. Rest." The whisper faded. Satisfied, though wary, Geralt turned back toward the village. But as he walked, he heard footsteps approach, the soft tread of someone unsure of their welcome. Tomor emerged between the trees, breathing hard from the climb. "Witcher, I hope to find you here." Geralt paused. "Checking the seal?" Tomor nodded. "I owed it to my father, and to the child." His gaze drifted to the monolith. "You've bound the spirit more tightly than he ever managed." Geralt shrugged. "Not tightly enough." "No one alive could do better," Tomor said quietly. For a moment they stood side by side, gazing at the ancient stone. Tomor exhaled. "The villagers will demand answers. They know something stirred last night." "Tell them the truth," Geralt replied. "A forest spirit has been sealed. There's nothing more to fear." Tomor's brow creased. "You know as well as I do that fear doesn't end simply because danger does. Marina's child will still be whispered about." Geralt met his gaze. "Then speak for her. You said you would." Tomor swallowed hard. "I will, even if it costs me favor with the other elders." "It will," Geralt said bluntly. "But it's the right thing." Tomor hesitated, then added in a quieter voice, "There's something else. My father left a journal, most of it destroyed by damp over the years. But I found a passage last night, one that mentions an heir." Geralt's attention sharpened. "He wrote that Shaleth once sought a successor, not merely a vessel, but a mind to carry the forest's memory forward. Not all spirits fade into nothing. Some evolve." Geralt frowned. "To what end?" "To preserve the old." "Before men hunted them out? Before axes bit the oldest roots?" His expression darkened. "If Elin has a gift, the spirit sensed it. That is why it chose her." Geralt's jaw clenched. The thought of Elin being singled out by destiny, or worse, by a spirit's lingering ambition, left a bitter taste in his mouth. "The seal will hold," Tomor repeated, as if trying to reassure himself. "She will grow free from it." Geralt looked toward the village. "Maybe, but she'll always carry the spark in her blood." Tomor turned to him. "What would you have Marina do? Hide the girl? Silence her gift?" Geralt shook his head. "No, she must learn. Control is protection. Fear is a weapon for the enemy." Tomor sighed. "I only pray the girl will not suffer for a bargain her mother never meant to make." "So do I," Geralt murmured. They walked back toward the village together. As they approached the fields, Tomor veered away, heading toward the gathering square where villagers had begun to congregate. Geralt knew the elder intended to speak for Marina, to shield her from suspicion. It would not be an easy task. The Witcher continued toward Lisa's home. Inside, Marina sat at the table, weary but calmer. Lisa brewed tea, glancing occasionally at Elin, who remained asleep beneath a warm blanket. The child's breathing was steady now, her face no longer strained by unseen burdens. Marina looked up as Geralt entered. "Is the seal safe?" "For now," he replied. "But Shyleth is not gone. Its echo remains." Marina's hand tightened around her cup. "Will it ever stop? Will this shadow follow her all her life?" Geralt considered his words carefully. "Spirits leave marks when they touch a soul. But marks aren't chains. They're reminders." "Of what?" "Strength," Geralt said. "She resisted it last night. Not many could." Marina blinked, surprised. "You truly think her strong?" Geralt nodded slightly. "Most children would have slipped entirely into the trance. She didn't. What happens now? For all of us?" Geralt glanced at the child again. "You rebuild, you heal, and when she's older she should be taught. Fear of magic is dangerous. Knowledge protects." Marina hesitated. "And you, Geralt? Will you leave soon?" He shrugged. "My path rarely allows long stays." Her gaze softened. "Then I must thank you before you go. You saved her life. Twice." Geralt gave a small, tired smile. "Just doing my work." Lisa scoffed. "Humility doesn't suit you, Witcher." Geralt ignored her, turning toward the window. Villagers were gathering in the square, some pointing cautiously towards Thomor, who stood addressing them. Tension rippled through the group, but no torches were raised, no pitchforks brandished. Good. Perhaps the village would learn. Elin stirred. "Geralt," she whispered, barely audible. He stepped closer. "I'm here." Her small hand reached toward him, finding his gauntlet. "Will the forest be quiet now?" "For a long time," he answered. "Long enough for you to grow strong." She smiled faintly. "I want to be brave. Like you." Geralt's throat tightened unexpectedly. "You already are." She drifted back to sleep with a peaceful sigh. Marina rose, bowing her head. "We owe you more than coin." Geralt waved a dismissive hand. "Keep your money. Use it for her." Marina stared, startled. "But your child's safety is payment enough." Her eyes shone. "Thank you." Geralt stepped outside again, breathing the crisp morning air. The forest remained quiet behind him, the village ahead uncertain. But within the uncertainty was peace, a fragile one, but real. He would stay one more night, ensure the seal held, ensure the villagers softened, ensure no new threat bled from the woods. Then he would ride on. The path always called. Yet as he looked back at Marina's door, he felt a lingering pull of thought. Not all monsters wore claws. Not all spirits lied from malice. And not all some, like Elin, were simply caught between worlds. And some with guidance found their way. Geralt hoped he would not be needed here again, but destiny had its own sense of humor, and the forest never forgot. Geralt remained in the village for the better part of the day, watching as sunlight washed the rooftops clean of frost. The villagers, still murmuring among themselves, gathered near Thomor as he spoke of the events in the forest. Though doubt flickered in their eyes, something in Thomor's tone, steady, resolute, pressed down the embers of suspicion. None wished to provoke the wrath of a witcher who had stood against an ancient spirit for their sake. Geralt stayed on the fringes of the gathering, arms folded, listening. He preferred the role of silent observer. Some threats revealed themselves only when folk relaxed enough to speak freely. The villagers did not approach him, though they cast furtive glances his way. A few nodded stiffly. Most kept distance, but none looked at Marina with the same hostility as before. A small step. Enough for now. As the village returned to its routine, Geralt headed toward the modest stable where Roach awaited him. The mare snorted as he approached, nudging him gently in the chest as though scolding him for the night's recklessness. "Easy, girl," he muttered, stroking her neck. "No worse for wear than usual." She flicked her tail in argument. Geralt checked her saddle, tightened straps, and brushed off lingering frost. His hands worked automatically, the quiet rhythm steadying his thoughts. Yet as he worked, he remained keenly aware that the forest's shadows hadn't lifted entirely. The weight of Shealith's lingering presence stretched thin around the tree line. He turned, scanning the woods. The trees stood perfectly still, as if carved from ancient stone. No wind stirred them. No birds perched on the branches nearest the shrine. The forest's heart was silent. Too silent, but not forgetting. A faint sound approached from behind. Light, hesitant footsteps. Marina appeared at the stable entrance, cloak wrapped tightly around her. Her face bore exhaustion, but her eyes looked clearer than they had in days. "Geralt," she said softly, "may I speak with you?" He nodded and continued brushing Roach, waiting for her to gather her thoughts. "Elin is resting," she began. "She wanted you to know she feels lighter, as if something heavy has left her chest." "That's good," he replied. "Dream binding can linger. She'll need time." Marina stepped closer, hands clasped. "I wanted to thank you again, truly. There is no repayment for saving her life." Geralt paused. "Wasn't looking for repayment." "I know," she whispered, "which makes your help all the more precious." Silence settled between them for a moment. Then Marina exhaled shakily. "Geralt, when Shealith spoke, he said I accepted his companionship, that I accepted knowledge. I was a lonely child then, foolish, and though I fled him, I fear that my mistake will echo in Elin's life." Geralt set the brush aside and turned toward her. "The past shapes us, but your daughter isn't bound to your choices. She stood against the spirit. Few could have done the same." Marina's voice trembled. "She only resisted because you were there." Geralt shook his head. "No. She resisted because she chose you over him." Her breath caught. For the first time since he met her, hope, frail but real, touched her expression. He moved to adjust Roach's bridle. "Still," he continued, "she'll need guidance, proper guidance. I'd suggest taking her to someone who understands the gift, a druid enclave or a mage you trust." Marina nodded slowly. "I will. When she is stronger, we will travel." She hesitated, then stepped closer. "Will you stay until then?" Geralt met her gaze evenly. "She is safe now. You don't need me here." Her lips parted, then pressed into a thin line. "I see. I stay where I'm needed, and right now, the path calls elsewhere." Marina looked down, fingers tightening around her cloak. "I understand," but her voice, quiet and thick, betrayed something deeper. Before she could say more, Tomor strode into the stable yard, urgency stiffening his stride. "Witcher," he called, "there's something at the shrine you should see." Geralt's eyes narrowed. "What now?" Tomor shook his head. "Not danger, not exactly, but unsettling." Geralt exchanged a glance with Marina, who paled slightly. He followed Tomor into the forest again. The path felt different without the weight of Shaleath pressing against every shadow. Still tense, still watchful, but less suffocating. When they stepped into the clearing, morning light filtered through the branches and dappled the ground. The monolith stood unchanged, yet at its base something had appeared. Flowers, small pale blossoms, white as frost crystals, growing in a perfect circle around the stone. They had not been there before. Their petals shimmered faintly, as if lit from within. Marina gasped. What are they? Tomor stepped back, rubbing his chin. Frost bloom, a rare flower. My father once told me they grow only in places touched by powerful spirits. Geralt crouched, brushing a finger against one blossom. The petals were cold to the touch, unnaturally so, but pulsed faintly with life. He muttered, a sign of retreat, not aggression. What does it mean? Marina pressed. It means Shaleath has withdrawn, Geralt answered, and in doing so left a piece of itself behind. Not a danger, more like a scar, or a memory? Tomor nodded slowly. The forest accepts the seal again. Geralt rose, and the danger is over. Marina breathed out in relief, until Geralt added, for now. Tomor looked uneasy. Should we remove the flowers? No, Geralt said. They mark the boundary. Disturbing them might weaken the anchor. The forest seemed calmer now, humbled by the previous night, but no longer straining against the bonds. When they returned to the village, Marina lingered near its entrance. Will they harm her? She asked suddenly. The flowers? Geralt shook his head. No, they are harmless. A reminder, nothing more. And Shaleath? Will he still reach for her in dreams? Not while the seal holds, and it will hold for a long time. She exhaled shakily, tears gathering. Thank the gods. She stepped closer, voice barely more than a whisper. Would you visit again someday? If your path leads you near? Geralt looked at her, thoughtful. Perhaps. It was not a promise, but it was not a refusal either. Marina lowered her gaze. Then I wish you safe travels, Witcher. Geralt inclined his head. Take care of her. I will, she whispered, always. He returned to Roach, securing his saddlebags. The mare stepped impatiently, eager to move on. Geralt swung himself into the saddle with practiced ease. As he rode through the village, men and women stepped aside. Some bowed their heads respectfully. Others watched with uncertain gratitude. The fear had softened, replaced with a wary respect for the man who had faced a spirit older than the woods themselves. Lisa waved him off with a rag still in hand. Tomor gave a firm nod. Marina stood at her doorstep, Aelin peeking shyly from behind her skirts, eyes bright and alive once more. Geralt lifted a hand in silent farewell. Then he turned toward the open road. The forest behind him slowly resumed its breath. The path ahead unfurled like a promise, and the Witcher rode on. Geralt placed the village behind him, yet the remnants of the night's confrontation trailed him like faint footprints in snow, never loud, never obtrusive, but present nonetheless. The path stretched onward in muted winter shades, the sun rising slowly over distant hills. Roach's steady gait lulled the Witcher into a silence that felt. The forest still whispered at his back, though its murmurs had softened. Geralt knew enough of spirits to recognize when a place shifted from danger to dormancy. The seal would hold. Shaleath would not regain strength for a very long time. And the girl, she had survived. More than that, she had resisted. For now, that was victory enough. By midday, Geralt had traveled far enough from the village that the trees widened and the wind carried no hint of shadowed breath. He guided Roach toward a stream and let her drink while he inspected his gear. His armor bore cracks from the spirit's assault. His ribs throbbed with each breath, and the runes burning across his palms from the improvised sealing ritual still had not fully faded. "If Vesemir could see me now," Geralt muttered, "he'd say I'm getting sloppy." Roach flicked an ear as if in agreement. He rinsed the dried blood from his gauntlets in the stream, wincing as cold water touched his bruised skin. The water carried away the stains, swirling crimson for a moment before dissolving into clarity once more. A fitting metaphor, he thought. The forest would remember the blood spilled, but in time the wound would become part of the soil's memory. The Witcher remounted and continued along the road, the quiet stretching comfortably. Snow began to drift from a pale sky, settling lightly on his shoulders and Roach's mane. It wasn't enough to hinder travel, only enough to remind him winter kept close company with the path. Hours passed. His thoughts wandered to Kaer Morhen, to old friends, to contracts unclaimed. Yet inevitably they circled back to the girl with frost-blue eyes who resisted an ancient spirit's call. A rare strength. Rare and valuable. The kind of gift mages and druids argued over. The kind that destiny enjoyed meddling with. Geralt frowned. Destiny. He had little patience for it, and even less belief. Yet the forest spirit's final words clung stubbornly to his memory. The promise holds. Spirits rarely lied about ancient pacts. Twisted them, yes. Broke them often. But a promise was a kind of magic even a witcher couldn't sever easily. The path carried him toward a crossroads. A signpost jutted from frozen earth, its lettering faded. One direction led toward Vizima, another toward the Temerian border, the third toward an old druid clearing Geralt had visited years ago, a circle of stones tended by wandering mystics, some wise, some arrogant, all difficult but not untrustworthy. He tugged lightly on Roach's reins. "Suppose we pay them a visit," he murmured. "Not for her. For me." Roach snorted, as if unsurprised by this turn. Geralt guided her toward the druidic path. If the druids knew anything of ancient spirits, or how their promises lingered, they might provide insight worth carrying back to the girl someday. Not that he intended to return, of course, but the path twisted in ways no witcher could predict. The snow thickened as he traveled deeper into the wilds. The wind grew sharper, threading through branches and stirring loose flakes into little spirals along the ground. Night approached faster beneath the canopy, shadows lengthening across the trail. Geralt sensed something ahead, movement light enough to suggest neither threat nor prey. Roach slowed without prompting. A figure stepped from behind a gnarled oak, not monstrous, not spectral, human. A young man cloaked in wolf-gray fur, staff in hand, eyes sharp as winter iron, a druid novice. By the cut of his garb, he inclined his head. Witcher of the wolf school. Geralt stopped Roach a few paces away. "You know me?" "Your kind bears unmistakable marks," the youth replied with a measured tone. "And the forest has stirred. We felt the tremor of a seal reforged." Geralt raised a brow. "News travels quickly." "In matters of old spirits," the youth said. "It always does." Geralt dismounted. Together they walked through a thinning of trees until the stone circle came into view, ancient pillars standing sentinel around a clearing dusted with fresh snow. A handful of druids gathered there, their expressions solemn. One stepped forward, a woman older than any Geralt had seen since visiting Skellige's circles. Her hair was long and white as birch bark, braided into coils that rested upon her shoulders. Her eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. "Witcher," she greeted him, "your hands bear the sting of a spirit's binding." Geralt offered no denial. Shelleth, forest spirit of the old rites. Bound once, broken, bound again. Her brows lifted slightly. A formidable task. Few would attempt such a ritual without training. I improvised. "A dangerous habit," she remarked calmly. Geralt shrugged. "Worked." She motioned for him to sit at the fire in the circle's center. He did. The flames offered warmth and the faint scent of pine resin. "Why have you come?" she asked. Geralt watched the fire dance. "The spirit claimed a girl, said she bore a promise made in her mother's youth, that she was a vessel for renewal." The druids murmured among themselves. The elder druid's expression tightened. "And this girl, did she answer him?" "Almost," Geralt admitted, but she resisted at the last moment. "A rare will," murmured a bearded druid, "even rarer in a child." Geralt nodded. "That's why I'm here. The spirit sealed, but its last words, its hunger, they linger. I want to know if such promises fade, or if they bind the bloodline forever." The elder druid tilted her head. "Ah, you fear the girl's gift may draw the spirit again." "Yes." The elder druid approached him, kneeling before the fire. "Spirits of the old forest do not bind their promises to individuals alone. They bind them to purpose. If the girl does not seek what Shelleth sought to give, the bond weakens in time." "How long?" Geralt pressed. "2." Her expression softened, though still carved with wisdom. "But if she walks the druid's path, learns to wield her gift with mastery, the spirit will not touch her again. Knowledge protects her where innocence endangers." Geralt considered this. "So she must learn." "Yes," the elder replied. "She must be taught, guided, strengthened." He sighed. "I told her mother as much, and you told her wisely. The girl will not be alone. The land watches, and if she chooses the path of discipline, the spirit's echo will scatter like mist." Geralt nodded slowly. Relief, tempered and cautious, settled in his chest. "Good." The elder druid's eyes narrowed knowingly. "You care for her?" Geralt stiffened. "I protect children where I can." "That is not all," she said. "You carry the burden of outcomes that are not yours to shape. A witcher's flaw." He scoffed. "Call it habit. Call it humanity," she countered. He stood. "My humanity is inconvenient, but not unwelcome," she said with a faint smile. He turned toward Roach. "If the seal breaks again, we'll feel it." "You will," she agreed, "but it will not break soon. You have bought time with your blood." Geralt mounted Roach. The elder druid raised one hand in parting. "Ride with wind at your back, Witcher." "And with fewer spirits in my way," he muttered. As he rode from the clearing, snow fell thicker, muting the world. The path lay open again, stretching past ridge and horizon, calling him onward. Yet something in the druid's words stayed with him. Knowledge protects, innocence endangers. He hoped the girl would choose the first, because the world rarely spared those who clung too tightly to the second. He urged Roach forward. The path waited, and Geralt of Rivia followed. Snow thickened along the path as Geralt rode, each flake drifting lazily, as though the world had grown tired from the night's conflict and sought to wrap it. Roach's hooves pressed shallow impressions into the powder, leaving a trail that vanished behind them in moments. The Witcher sat silently in the saddle, cloak drawn against the cold. mind wandering despite his attempts to focus on the road. The druids had given him answers, not ones he fully trusted, but answers nonetheless. Shyleth was sealed. The bond, though lingering in fragment and echo, would fade if the girl grew strong and learned the discipline of magic. Knowledge would protect her. Confidence would anchor her. It was enough for him to continue onward. Yet Geralt had lived through too many seasons to place blind faith in the word enough. Still, the path tolerated no pause without reason. With the spirit defeated and the threat dispersed, all that remained for him was the road ahead, open, cold, and steady in its demand. By evening, the snowfall eased, giving way to a pale amber sky streaked with lavender and fading gold. The scent of pine filled the air as Geralt guided Roach toward an abandoned wayfarer shelter, little more than a roof and 3 half-rotten posts leaning together in stubborn defiance of time. Moss climbed one pillar, the others sagged as though bowing to the inevitable. Geralt dismounted and set a small fire within the shelter's stone ring. The flame crackled softly, a sound that comforted him more than the warmth itself. Roach settled nearby, shaking loose a dusting of snow and lowering her head to rest. Geralt removed his gloves, flexing stiff fingers. The burn marks from the ritual, faintly glowing the previous night, had darkened into reddish scars. In a few days they would fade entirely, but the memory of channeling a spirit binding would remain. Such magic was not meant for witchers. Yet necessity cared little for tradition. He took a sip from his flask, the familiar bite of alcohol, spreading warmth through his chest. The fire's glow played across his medallion, which lay motionless against his armor. Silent, at last, Geralt leaned back against a wooden post. The quiet seeped into him like a balm. For a time he allowed himself to rest, to set aside questions, concerns, and lingering doubts. But peace seldom endured long in his mind. He remembered the way Elin had clung to her mother upon waking, the tremor in her voice, the lingering shine of dreamlight in her eyes. He remembered the fear etched across Morena's face, not the panic of losing her daughter, but the guilt of having once opened a door she could never fully close. And he remembered Shaleith's voice, fading into nothing, yet echoing still. The child bears the promise. Spirits did not speak without meaning. Their promises twisted root deep. Geralt rubbed a hand over his face. Damn forest spirits. The fire snapped sharply as if agreeing. Night settled fully, dark and absolute, though the clouds parted enough for silver moonlight to spill across the clearing. Geralt found himself staring upward, tracing familiar constellations, not searching for omens, but simply grounding himself in the unchanging sky. The stars did not care for spirits, witchers, or lingering promises. Their light endured, silent and indifferent. A rustle stirred nearby. Geralt reached instinctively for his sword, then relaxed. A fox darted across the clearing, pausing only to sniff at a fallen branch before vanishing into underbrush. The forest had regained its natural rhythm. Good. But something tugged at him still. A whisper at the edge of thought. He closed his eyes, letting the fire's warmth lull him toward sleep. He dreamed. Not the fevered visions that plagued witchers after potions, nor the twisted nightmares of monsters encountered on the path. This dream was quiet. He stood in the clearing of the shrine. The monolith loomed tall, its runes glowing in pulses, not bright, not threatening, simply alive. Snow drifted gently around it, and before the stone stood a small figure, Aelin. Her nightdress gleamed with faint silver light, though she seemed unharmed, calm, peaceful. She turned to him, eyes steady. "Geralt," she said softly, "I'm not afraid anymore." He approached cautiously. "You should be. Spirits don't leave marks without consequence." Her smile was small but certain. "I'm not marked by him." He frowned. "Then what is this?" She looked past him, toward the ancient trees arching overhead. "The forest remembers everything," she said. "It remembers him. It remembers my mother. It remembers the old promises." She placed a hand over her heart. "And it remembers me." Geralt opened his mouth to speak, but Aelin continued, voice growing faint. "He was wrong. I am not his vessel." Snow swirled faster around her, obscuring her form. "But one day, I will return here." Geralt's pulse quickened. "Why?" "To end this forever," she whispered. The shrine grew blindingly bright, and Geralt woke with a sharp gasp. The fire had dwindled to embers. Roach lifted her head, snorting softly at his sudden movement. Geralt's breath fogged in the cold air, and his heart hammered harder than it should have. "Just a dream," he muttered. He knew better. Witchers dream rarely, and dreams that come unbidden often walk beside truth. Damn it. He stood and kicked snow over the embers until smoke curled faintly upward. Dawn had begun to stain the sky with pale hues. He saddled Roach, ignoring the stiffness in his ribs. They set off once more, the path winding ahead like a ribbon of frost. Geralt traveled 2 more days before reaching a larger road. Merchants passed, bundled in heavy cloaks, leading wagons laden with grain and furs. A few nodded politely as he rode by. Most stared nervously, whispering as though witchers brought winter with their shadows. At a small crossroads inn, Geralt paused for a meal. The warmth of the hearth he ate in silence, listening to the chatter around him, rumors of Nilfgaardian scouts, talk of wolves wandering too near outlying farms, whispers of bandits in the north. The world, as always, turned its troubles without pause, yet Geralt's thoughts remained anchored to a quiet village near a restless forest. As he finished his meal, a voice interrupted his thoughts. "You look troubled, Witcher." Geralt glanced up as the innkeeper poured fresh ale into his tankard. The stocky man had a shrewd but not unfriendly expression. "Long road behind me," Geralt replied. "Longer one ahead, I'd wager." Geralt grunted in agreement. The innkeeper leaned on the table. "Word came earlier of a witcher saving a child from some forest phantom." "That you?" Geralt sighed. "Depends who's talking. Folk from a southern hamlet said you sealed a spirit older than stone. Folk say plenty." "Aye." The innkeeper's eyes twinkled. "But they said the child lived. That part matters." Geralt's expression softened a fraction. "It does." The innkeeper straightened. "Well then, let the path trouble you less tonight, Witcher. Eat, drink, rest." Geralt nodded his thanks. He spent the night at the inn, though sleep came in light breaths and short intervals. No dreams visited him. Not Aelin, not Shaleth, not the forest's whisper. Only silence. In the morning he saddled Roach again. As he rode away, frost glittering on the road beneath him, he murmured under his breath, "Grow strong, girl. Strong enough to choose your own path. Strong enough to break old chains." Roach flicked her ears. Geralt straightened in the saddle. Ahead the path waited, unchanging, endless, and calling. Behind him the forest slept, the seal held, and a child dreamt of a freedom she'd earned through fire and fear. Geralt of Rivia rode on, the spirit's echo faded, and the story found its quiet end.